The glass doors of the dealership glide open, revealing a showroom bathed in warm lighting. A man walks in, tall, confident, dressed in a simple but well-fitted suit. His presence is commanding, yet to the showroom staff, he is invisible. Eyes flick to him, then away, as if acknowledging him might disrupt the pristine atmosphere they carefully maintain. He moves between the cars, studying them with an expert gaze. He isn't just browsing, he knows what he's looking for. A salesman, young and eager, starts toward him, but an older, more seasoned colleague catches his arm. A subtle shake of the head, a quiet warning. The message is clear. This isn't worth your time. Minutes pass before anyone acknowledges him. When they do, it isn't with the warm enthusiasm that greets the other customers. A tall, silver-haired salesman finally approaches, but his expression carries no trace of welcome. "Can I help you?" The words are polite, but the tone is clipped, edged with something unmistakable. Disbelief? Condescension? A nod. "Yes, I'm looking for something high performance, something built for longevity." The salesman's lips twitch in amusement, his eyes dragging over the man's attire. No expensive watch, no obvious designer labels. Nothing to suggest he belongs here. His voice lowers, words slow as if explaining something to a child. "Well, our luxury models require serious investment. Perhaps you'd like to look at something in a more practical range." The insult lands, subtle but heavy. A flicker of irritation passes across the customer's face, but he doesn't react. He's had years of practice swallowing indignities like this. He gestures toward a sleek, top-tier sports model. "This one, what's the price?" A chuckle. Not one of amusement, but of dismissal. The salesman folds his arms, shaking his head. "Sir, this car isn't exactly affordable." He leans in slightly, lowering his voice. "We do have some used models out back." A long pause. The air between them thickens. A quiet breath, controlled. "I didn't ask about used models. I asked for the price." The salesman's smile tightens. He glances around, as if waiting for someone else to step in, to save him from the inconvenience of this exchange. No one does. Finally, he sighs, straightens, and crosses his arms. "I'm sorry, but we can't just let anyone test drive these vehicles. We usually require proof of financial ability before you waste your time." The words are calm, but there's an edge now. The salesman blinks, caught off guard. His hesitation is all the confirmation needed. A moment stretches between them, thick with the weight of unspoken assumptions. Around them, the showroom carries on, oblivious or perhaps willfully ignoring the scene. Then slowly a smile, not of amusement, but of quiet understanding. "All right," the customer says smoothly, reaching into his jacket pocket. "Let's talk about proof." And with that, he places a business card onto the polished glass counter between them. The salesman glances down and the shift is instant. Eyes widen, mouth parts slightly, breath catches in his throat. The name printed in bold, elegant lettering is the last thing he expected to see. The customer doesn't need approval. He doesn't need permission, because the name on the card belongs to the man who owns this entire dealership. The moment Marcus Carter steps into the dealership, the energy changes. It's a feeling he's all too familiar with, the barely concealed surprise, the calculating glances, the assumptions forming in the minds of those who believe they can judge a man by his skin rather than his accomplishments. He carries himself with ease, his tailored suit pressed to perfection, his shoes polished, his watch understated yet expensive. Confidence radiates from him, but still it doesn't seem to be enough to override the quiet resistance simmering beneath the surface. Across the showroom, two salesmen exchange a look, one subtly shaking his head as the other takes a step forward, hesitating before fully committing to the approach. The older salesman, the one who has worked there the longest, the one who has decided for years who is worth their time, clears his throat before finally speaking. "Can I help you?" The words are neutral, but the tone carries something sharper beneath it. Marcus nods, ignoring the weight of judgment in the man's eyes. "I'm looking to buy a car, something top of the line." The salesman's gaze flickers over him once more, searching for something, An expensive name brand, a familiar logo, something to reassure him that this man belongs here. Finding nothing obvious, he tightens his jaw. These models tend to run pretty high, he says, carefully selecting his words. Might I suggest something a little more practical? Marcus holds his gaze, a quiet amusement flickering in his eyes. It's a game he's played many times before, one where the rules are stacked against him, yet he wins every time. I'm not here for practical, he replies smoothly. I'm here for the best. A beat of silence follows. The salesman's mouth presses into a thin line before he forces a chuckle, the kind that masks discomfort behind forced politeness. Well, sir, we don't let just anyone test drive these models, he says, folding his arms. We usually need proof that a customer is serious before we... Marcus reaches into his pocket, retrieving a sleek black card holder. With a deliberate motion, he pulls out a platinum business card and places it on the glass counter between them. The salesman barely glances at it at first, his disinterest evident, but then he sees the name, Marcus Carter. His face pales slightly as realization dawns. The name isn't just familiar, it's powerful. A name that appears in financial news, on real estate deals, and high-profile business acquisitions. A name that belongs to the man who owns this very dealership. Marcus lets the silence stretch between them, watching as the salesman's confidence crumbles. The man clears his throat, scrambling to salvage the moment. I didn't realize... Marcus doesn't let him finish. He picks up his card, sliding it back into his holder before meeting the man's stunned gaze. I don't need to prove anything, he says calmly, but you just did. The weight of the words settles in the air, heavy and unshakable. Around them, other employees shift uncomfortably, pretending not to notice but hanging on to every word. Marcus glances around, taking in the dealership. The same dealership where he once stood as an unseen customer, where assumptions tried to reduce him, where doors meant to be open were quietly pushed shut. And now it belongs to him. Marcus steps toward the front desk, his presence confident yet composed. The receptionist barely glances up, her fingers still tapping against the keyboard, her expression indifferent. He waits, but when the seconds stretch into an uncomfortable silence, he clears his throat. I'd like to see the latest luxury sedan, he says. The receptionist spares him a glance before flicking her gaze toward one of the salesmen lingering nearby. Without a word, she motions toward the man, Ethan Coleman. Middle-aged, sharp suit, the kind of smirk that tells people he believes he knows exactly who belongs in a place like this and who doesn't. Ethan steps forward with a calculated smile, his eyes scanning Marcus quickly before masking his initial impression with thinly veiled politeness. Looking for something in particular? His tone is casual, but the underlying condescension is unmistakable. Marcus meets his gaze evenly. I'd like to see the latest model of your luxury line. I hear it's a smooth ride. Ethan's smile doesn't falter, but there's a flicker of something in his eyes. Hesitation, skepticism. He gestures toward the showroom with an exaggerated flourish. That's one of our high-end models, he says. Price tag runs a little steep. You sure that's what you're looking for? Marcus doesn't blink. I am. There's another pause, just long enough for the air to shift. Ethan shifts on his feet before letting out a chuckle, a sound that carries more doubt than humor. Look, I don't want to waste your time, he says, voice dropping just slightly. Most people who come in here looking at that car end up leaving with something a little more practical. Marcus tilts his head intellectually, studying the man in front of him. There it is. The expectation, the assumption, the belief that wealth only comes in a certain form, that success only wears a certain face. Practical isn't what I'm here for, Marcus says smoothly. I'd like to test drive it. Ethan exhales sharply like he's trying to hold on to his patience. We don't usually let customers test drive that model unless we're sure that they're serious buyers, he says. Marcus lifts a brow. I see. The tension stretches between them, thick and unyielding. Ethan gestures toward the lot with a forced chuckle. Maybe we can start with something else, he suggests. Get a feel for what fits your budget. Marcus watches him for a moment, then reaches into his pocket, pulling out the same sleek black card holder. This time, he doesn't slide his business card across the counter. He simply holds it between his fingers, letting the weight of the moment settle. Ethan's eyes flicker toward it, and for the first time, real hesitation seeps into his expression. The air around them changes. "I don't think you know who I am," Marcus says, voice calm but firm. "I don't need to prove my budget, but you just proved something to me." Ethan stiffens, his face paling as understanding dawns. The smugness drains from his features, replaced by something resembling panic. Marcus tucks the card back into his pocket. "I'll take the car," he says, then lets his gaze settle on Ethan for a second longer. "And the dealership." A hush falls over the space, the weight of his words settling like a final note in a song that had been building for far too long. Around them, employees exchange uncertain glances, the reality of the moment sinking in. Ethan swallows hard, his mouth opening slightly as if grasping for words that refuse to come. Marcus lets the silence stretch just long enough before turning toward the showroom, his steps slow, measured, unshaken. He came here to buy a car. Instead, he's leaving with ownership. Ethan's gaze flickers over Marcus, his stance casual but his intent unmistakable. The way he tilts his head, the forced smile tugging at the corners of his lips, everything about his demeanor suggests he has already made up his mind about the kind of person standing in front of him. "Sir, I'm not sure this is what you're looking for," he says, voice smooth, polite, but laced with something unspoken. Marcus holds his gaze, unshaken. "And what exactly do you think I'm looking for?" Ethan exhales a chuckle as if he finds the question amusing. "It's just, we don't usually show this particular model unless we know the customer is serious. High-end vehicles require a bit of, let's say, pre-approval." The words land between them like a gauntlet thrown down. Marcus recognizes the game, subtle enough to be dismissed as mere policy, but direct enough that the message is clear. He isn't seen as a real customer. He isn't seen at all. "I see," Marcus says slowly, his tone measured. "So, pre-approval. That must be something new because I didn't see it posted anywhere." Ethan shrugs, his smirk deepening. "It's just company policy. You understand." Marcus doesn't look away. "I'd like to speak to your manager." For the first time, a flicker of hesitation crosses Ethan's face, but it's gone as quickly as it appeared. He chuckles again, this time softer, as if trying to maintain control of the situation. "Sir, I've been here a long time. I know which cars fit which customers." Marcus raises a brow. "And which kind of customer am I?" Ethan's smile tightens. "Look, I don't want to waste your time. There are plenty of great vehicles on the lot, ones that are more practical." There it is, the carefully chosen words, the unspoken belief that Marcus doesn't belong here, that he isn't the type of man who drives luxury. Marcus keeps his expression neutral, but inside a slow burn ignites. He has seen this play out before. Doors closing before he even reaches them, assumptions made before he even speaks. But today, he isn't in the mood to play along. "Bring me the manager," he repeats, this time firmer. Ethan hesitates, but before he can respond, another voice cuts through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" A man in a pressed gray suit strides toward them, his expression unreadable. The dealership manager. Ethan turns quickly, eager to regain control of the moment. "No problem at all, Mr. Langston. Just explaining company policy." Marcus doesn't wait for Ethan to spin his narrative further. "Your employee refuses to show me the vehicle I came here to see. Something about requiring pre-approval." The manager's eyes flick between Marcus and Ethan, assessing the situation. For a second, there's a hesitation, a moment where he considers which side to take. Then, smoothing at his jacket, he forces a neutral smile. "Of course, sir, we'd be happy to help," he says, though there's an edge of reluctance in his voice. "I'm sure there was just a misunderstanding." Ethan shifts on his feet, his posture stiffening. The momentary power he wielded is slipping, and he doesn't like it. Marcus doesn't smile. "Good. Then I'd like to test drive the car." Another pause. More hesitation. Langston nods, but there's something almost begrudging in the way he does it. "Right this way," he says. As Marcus follows, he can feel the weight of Ethan's glare burning into his back, the unspoken resentment thick in the air. This wasn't how the salesman expected things to go. But Marcus has spent his life stepping into places where people thought he didn't belong. and he wasn't about to stop now. The manager's smile is polite, practiced, designed to pacify rather than resolve. He steps forward, extending a hand. Marcus does not shake. Instead, Marcus watches, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "I understand there's been some confusion," the manager says smoothly. "Let's clear this up." Marcus doesn't respond right away. He lets the silence stretch, lets the weight of the moment settle. "I was just told the car requires pre-approval," he says finally. "I'd like to see where that policy is written." A flicker of something crosses the manager's face. Annoyance, perhaps, or mild surprise that Marcus isn't backing down. He recovers quickly, his tone still light, but laced with impatience. "Well, sir, sometimes high-value vehicles are reserved for serious buyers. I'm sure you can understand that." Marcus tilts his head slightly. "And how do you determine who qualifies as a serious buyer?" The manager's smile tightens. "It's not personal," he assures, though the forced casualness in his voice suggests otherwise. "It's just policy. The same policy that hadn't existed moments ago." Marcus glances toward the car in question, its polished frame gleaming under the dealership's bright lights. "So you're saying it's already spoken for?" His tone is even, but there's an edge beneath it. "That's correct," the manager replies without hesitation. "It's already reserved." The words hang between them, a final dismissal. Marcus exhales through his nose, nodding slightly as if letting it go. Then the doors swing open. A young white couple strolls inside, laughing softly to themselves. Their eyes sweep over the showroom before landing on the same luxury sedan. Ethan is on them in an instant. His demeanor shifts as if on cue, posture straightening, a genuine smile forming. He barely allows them time to settle before gesturing toward the car. "Beautiful choice," he says warmly. "You looking to test drive today?" Marcus watches the exchange unfold in real time. No mention of pre-approvals, no hesitation, no reservations. The young couple smiles, nodding enthusiastically. "We were just passing by and figured we'd take a look." Ethan is already fishing the keys from his pocket, his entire attitude transformed. Marcus takes a slow breath. There it is. The proof he didn't need, but the proof that was given anyway. His fingers curl slightly at his sides. Not in anger, he is too familiar with this kind of game to react with rage. But there is something else rising in him, something stronger than frustration, something resolute. He doesn't say a word, not yet. Instead, he steps back, taking in the scene, the laughter, the easy conversation, the doors that swing open for some and slam shut for others. And then, with quiet certainty, he pulls out his phone. It's time to make a call. The air in the showroom shifts. The quiet murmurs of customers browsing fade into the background as Marcus remains unmoving, his presence demanding attention without raising his voice. His expression is unreadable, but there is a flicker of something sharp behind his eyes. Richard, the manager, watches him for a moment, then side-eyes a tired, forced exhale that barely masks his growing impatience. "You're still here," he says, his tone flat, dismissive. "Look, I thought we made ourselves clear." Marcus cocks his head slightly, his calm unshaken. "I just want to understand," he says, his voice measured. "One moment the car requires pre-approval, the next it's already reserved. And yet, somehow, it's available for a test drive by—" He gestures toward the young white couple now seated comfortably inside the car, doors open, hands exploring the sleek interior. "Them." Richard's lips press into a thin line. He doesn't respond, but his silence is answer enough. The young couple, unaware of the tension across the room, laughs softly as Ethan leans in, pointing out the vehicle's luxurious features. Their enthusiasm is met with warmth, patience, a stark contrast to the cold, clipped words Marcus had been fed. Still, Richard says nothing. Marcus lets the pause stretch, forces him to sit with the weight of his own bias. Then, at last, Richard exhales sharply and folds his arms. His polite veneer cracks, irritation seeping through the gaps. "Fine," he says, voice dropping into something sharper. "Since you're insisting, I'll tell you plainly. We don't cater to customers who might struggle with financing." The words land with a quiet, cutting finality. A hush spreads across the showroom. A few nearby customers glance over, sensing the tension but pretending not to stare. A salesman in the corner shifts uncomfortably, suddenly engrossed in his clipboard. Marcus stares at Richard, the insult hanging between them, thick in the air. Struggle with financing. He lets the words settle, weighing them like a carefully measured scale. And then, after a long moment, he nods slowly. "That's what you think?" he asks, his tone still quiet, still even. Richard smirks, tilting his head. "No hard feelings, pal," he says. "But this is a high-end dealership. We have a certain clientele I'm sure you can understand." Marcus watches him a second longer. Then he lets out a short breath, a quiet laugh almost. "Interesting," he murmurs. "So you've decided my financial situation without even asking." Richard shrugs. "Experience." A pause. Then Marcus reaches into his suit pocket and pulls out a sleek black leather wallet. He flips it open, revealing a sleek platinum card nestled within. The kind of card most people never get their hands on. The kind that doesn't have a limit. Richard's smirk falters. Marcus watches the change in his expression, the way the self-satisfied certainty wavers ever so slightly. But it isn't enough. The damage has already been done. He slides the wallet back into his pocket. "Interesting," he repeats, his voice thoughtful. "Because I was planning to buy that car. In cash." A beat, a flicker of something uneasy crosses Richard's face. Marcus lets the words sink in before continuing. "But you know what?" he says smoothly. "I don't think I want just the car anymore." He tilts his head, watching Richard with an expression that is unreadable but dangerous in its quiet certainty. "I think I'll take the whole dealership." The door swings shut behind Marcus as he steps out into the crisp afternoon air. He exhales slowly, resisting the familiar weight of anger threatening to rise. Years of experience have taught him that reacting with frustration only plays into their expectations. Today, however, would be different. He reaches into his pocket, pulling out his phone. A name flashes across the screen, a direct line to his investment manager. He presses call, bringing the phone to his ear as he walks toward his car. "I need you to move on that acquisition we discussed last quarter," he says evenly. His voice carries no hint of the encounter that had just transpired inside. "Yes, the dealership. Make it happen by the end of the day." There's a pause on the other end before a response, but Marcus already knows the answer. Deals like these don't take long when money and influence are on his side. The only thing standing in the way had been his own hesitation, his reluctance to believe that this kind of blatant prejudice still existed in places like this. But now any doubt had been erased. He ends the call, sliding into the driver's seat of his current car, a vehicle far more expensive than the one they had refused to sell him. He grips the wheel for a moment, then starts the engine, leaving the dealership behind with the quiet certainty that the next time he steps inside, the entire landscape will have shifted. Back inside the showroom, Richard watches through the large glass windows, his smirk still lingering as he turns back toward the reception desk. "Guy thought he could walk in here like he owned the place," he mutters with a chuckle. Ethan laughs along, shaking his head. "They always do," he adds, before returning his attention to the white couple still admiring the car Marcus had wanted. His tone brightens as he addresses them, offering up a deal as if nothing had happened. The rest of the afternoon continues as normal. The showroom remains busy, the staff carrying on with their work, oblivious to the fact that the very foundation of their business is about to shift beneath them. Hours later, as the sun begins to dip, Richard receives a phone call. His personal line buzzes, an unfamiliar number flashing across the screen. He hesitates, then answers. "This is Richard Thornton," he says, his voice as confident as ever. The voice on the other end is professional but firm. "Mr. Thornton, this is James Lawson from Corporate Acquisitions. I'm calling to inform you that effective immediately, the ownership of this dealership has changed hands." The color drains from Richard's face. "What?" His voice tightens, the amusement from earlier now replaced with something closer to disbelief. "The dealership has been purchased," Lawson continues, unbothered by the stammering on the other end. "Your employment status is pending review, but you'll need to report to the new owner first thing tomorrow." Richard barely registers the words. His grip tightens around his phone as a sinking feeling settles in his chest. New owner. His eyes flick toward the glass entrance, where the doors suddenly swing open. And there, stepping inside with the same composed confidence as before, is Marcus. Marcus steps outside, his fingers tightening around his phone. He knows this feeling too well. The quiet, simmering frustration of being dismissed, of being judged before he's even spoken. But anger won't serve him here, not today. He takes a deep breath, centering himself before pressing a contact on his phone. It's time, he says, his voice calm and measured. Go ahead with the acquisition. The voice on the other end confirms without hesitation. The deal was already in motion, but Marcus had wanted to see for himself, had wanted to give them a chance. They had failed that test spectacularly. He lowers his phone and glances back at the dealership. Through the glass windows, he sees them laughing. Ethan, the smug salesman, shaking his head as he exchanges words with Richard, the manager. They look so sure of themselves, so comfortable in their small, narrow view of the world. He lets the moment settle before turning and walking to his car, driving off without a word. Inside, Richard leans against the counter, watching Marcus leave with a smirk. They always think they belong, he mutters, shaking his head. Ethan chuckles in agreement, tapping his pen against the desk. Let's see if he comes back with his credit score next time. They share a laugh, returning to their work, completely unaware that in a few hours their entire world is about to shift. By the next morning, whispers have already started spreading among the dealership staff. Something about corporate restructuring, an unexpected change in ownership. Employees exchange confused glances as they gather for their morning briefing. Richard stands at the center of the showroom, arms crossed, irritation bubbling beneath his carefully maintained composure. He doesn't like surprises, and the uncertainty in the air puts him on edge. Then, the front doors swing open. Marcus steps inside, the same calm confidence in his stride as the day before, but this time, something is different. This time, he owns the place. Silence falls over the staff as realization dawns. The man they had dismissed, had humiliated, is now standing in front of them, not as a customer, but as their employer. Richard's throat tightens. What's going on? Marcus doesn't answer right away. He lets the moment hang, lets the weight of it settle over them. Then finally he speaks. I wanted to see how this dealership treated its customers, he says evenly, his gaze sweeping the room. And I have to say, I was disappointed. A nervous shuffle passes through the crowd. Ethan's smirk is long gone. He looks away, shifting uncomfortably. Marcus doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. The authority in his tone is enough to command their full attention. I believe in excellence. I believe in treating people with respect, regardless of what they look like when they walk through those doors, he continues. And as the new owner of this dealership, I will ensure that this place operates on those principles. The room remains silent. No one dares to speak. Richard's jaw tightens. Look, if there was some misunderstanding, Marcus holds up a hand, cutting him off with the same calm demeanor he's maintained from the beginning. There was no misunderstanding, he says. I was dismissed the moment I walked in. Not because I couldn't afford a car, but because of your assumptions. He turns, his gaze locking onto Ethan. You looked at me up and down and decided I wasn't worth your time. Ethan swallows hard, his face reddening. Marcus steps forward, his presence filling the room. That ends today, he says. This dealership is under new leadership, and I have no room for employees who refuse to show basic respect to our customers. The weight of the words sinks in. Some of the staff nod slightly, recognizing the fairness in his words, while others shift uncomfortably, unsure of what this means for them. Marcus glances at his watch. If anyone has a problem with that, you're free to walk out now. A tense silence follows. No one moves. Good, Marcus says simply. Now let's get to work. He turns and walks toward his new office, leaving behind a room full of stunned faces. And for the first time, the dealership feels like a place where anyone, regardless of how they look, can walk in and be treated with the dignity they deserve. The atmosphere in the conference room is tense, a low murmur rippling through the gathered employees. Some shift uncomfortably in their seats, sensing that whatever is about to happen isn't just another routine meeting. Richard stands at the front, arms crossed, attempting to maintain his usual authoritative posture, though a flicker of unease glints in his eyes. The regional director steps forward, adjusting his tie before clearing his throat. His gaze sweeps over the room before settling on Richard. As many of you may have already heard, he begins, there have been some major changes within our corporate structure. Effective immediately, this dealership is under new ownership. A wave of whispers spreads through the room. Ethan's brow furrows, his fingers tapping against the table. Richard straightens, his mouth tightening into a thin line. This is ridiculous, Richard scoffs. I would have been informed about something this significant. Who the hell is the new owner? Silence follows. Then the door swings open. Marcus steps inside. The whispers stop. A heavy, stunned silence blankets the room as all eyes lock onto him. His posture is composed, his presence commanding. His eyes flicker toward Richard and Ethan, the very men who dismissed him just a day before. He allows the moment to settle before he speaks. I am. Ethan exhales sharply as if the wind had just been knocked out of him. Richard's face drains of color. You? Richard's voice is barely above a whisper. Surprised? Marcus tilts his head slightly, his gaze unwavering. You shouldn't be. You judged me before I even had a chance to speak. Assumed I didn't belong. Assumed I couldn't afford the very cars you sell. Richard clenches his jaw, regaining his composure. This has to be some kind of joke. The regional director clears his throat. This is no joke, Richard. The deal was finalized yesterday. Marcus Carter is now the sole owner of this dealership. Ethan stiffens. The arrogance he carried the day before has vanished, replaced by the stark realization that he had just insulted the man who now holds his livelihood in his hands. Marcus steps further into the room, his voice smooth, controlled. I watched how you treated me when I walked in here. Watched as you dismissed me, as you handed off the very car I asked about to someone else, assuming I wasn't worth your time. His eyes land on Ethan, who looks away, his usual bravado reduced to nothing. That wasn't the first time you did it, Marcus continues, and I doubt it would have been the last. But I want to make one thing clear. This dealership will no longer be a place where people are judged before they even open their mouths. Richard exhales, his arms crossing defensively. So what? You're here to gloat? Fire us? Teach us a lesson? Marcus watches him for a moment, then shakes his head. No, I don't waste my time on petty revenge, but I do demand accountability. He turns toward the regional director, who nods, opening a folder and scanning the contents. After a review of company policies and customer treatment records, it has been decided that certain individuals no longer align with the values we uphold. His gaze lands on Richard and Ethan. Your services will no longer be needed. Richard's face hardens, his lips parting as if to protest, but he doesn't get the chance. Two corporate representatives step forward, presenting them with termination documents. Ethan looks utterly lost, his usual smugness shattered. I suggest you gather your belongings, the regional director adds. Security will escort you out. Richard lets out a bitter laugh. This is absurd. Marcus remains unmoved. What's absurd is how many people you have likely driven away from this dealership because of your bias. What's absurd is that you never saw this coming. Ethan swallows hard, the weight of it finally sinking in. He rises from his chair, his face red with humiliation, but he knows there's no argument to be made. One by one, they leave the room. Marcus turns back to the remaining employees. Some look relieved, others uncertain. He lets out a breath before addressing them. This isn't about revenge. This is about change. I will not tolerate discrimination here. Every customer who walks through those doors will be treated with the same level of respect. If that's something you can stand behind, then you have nothing to worry about. A quiet moment passes before one of the salespeople nods, then another. Marcus lets a small smile tug at the corner of his lips. Now let's get to work. The room is thick with silence, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on every employee seated around the table. A tense shift ripples through the group as the regional director straightens his tie, his expression unreadable. A folder rests on the table in front of him, a single sheet of paper visible beneath his fingertips. The words that follow land like a thunderclap. As of this morning, the ownership of this dealership has changed hands. Murmurs spread, Some exchange glances, while others sit frozen, their minds racing. Richard leans forward, his fingers curling into the table's edge. "This has to be a mistake," he scoffs, his voice edged with disbelief. "No one informed me of any buyout." The regional director doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he shifts the paper toward him, tapping the top of the page. The paperwork has been finalized. The sale is complete. Ethan swallows hard, shifting in his seat. His usually smug expression has vanished, replaced by unease. Then who's the new owner? His voice lacks its usual confidence. The door opens. Marcus steps in. The effect is instant. The murmurs die, leaving behind a silence so thick it feels suffocating. Eyes widen, faces pale. Richard blinks, as if hoping his mind is playing tricks on him. Ethan grips the arm of his chair, his jaw tightening. Marcus walks in with quiet authority, his movements deliberate, his gaze sweeping over the very men who had dismissed him just a day before. He does not smile. He does not gloat. He merely lets the truth settle into the room like a slow-burning fire. "I am." Richard exhales sharply, shaking his head. This isn't possible." Marcus tilts his head slightly, his voice calm but firm. "It's already done." A heavy silence follows, the truth settling in like bricks on their chests. Richard's lips press into a thin line, and for the first time he doesn't have a quip, a defense, or a condescending remark. Ethan looks away entirely, suddenly unable to meet Marcus's eyes. The regional director clears his throat, breaking the tension. "Mr. Carter is now the sole owner of this dealership. Effective immediately, there will be significant policy changes." Marcus clasps his hands in front of him, his tone measured. "This dealership will no longer be a place where customers are judged before they have even spoken, where assumptions dictate service, where people are made to feel unwelcome based on nothing but the biases of the person standing in front of them." His gaze lands on Richard, holding it for a beat longer. "That ends today." Richard lets out a dry laugh, though there's no humor in it. "So what now? You're here to throw us out? Make a spectacle of it?" Marcus doesn't flinch. "No, I don't waste time on theatrics." He turns toward the regional director, who retrieves another set of papers. "However, after a thorough review of conduct and customer service records, it has been decided that some individuals no longer align with the values this dealership will uphold." He slides the first document forward. "Richard Thornton, your employment is terminated, effective immediately." Richard stiffens, his knuckles whitening. "You can't be serious." Another paper slides across the table. "Ethan Coleman, the same applies to you." Ethan's face drains of color. He opens his mouth as if to protest, but no words come out. "Security will escort you both out," the regional director adds, his voice professional but cold. Richard slams a fist against the table, rising from his seat. "This is ridiculous." Marcus remains unshaken. "What's ridiculous is how many people you've humiliated, ignored, and mistreated simply because you could." His voice doesn't rise, but there's an undeniable finality in it. "Your time here is over." Ethan scrambles to his feet, his composure crumbling. "You can't do this." Marcus meets his panicked gaze. "I already have." A security guard steps forward, motioning toward the exit. Richard glares, but he knows there's no way out of this. With stiff movements, he grabs his things, storming toward the door. Ethan follows, his shoulders hunched, his entire demeanor reduced to defeat. The door swings shut behind them. A deep breath settles in the room, the air shifting, the tension slowly easing. The remaining employees glance at one another, some appearing relieved, others uncertain. Marcus doesn't waste a second. He turns back to the table, his voice firm. "To the rest of you, I'm not here to destroy jobs. I'm here to rebuild this dealership into something better. If you can stand behind a business that values respect, fairness, and integrity, then you have nothing to worry about." A few employees nod, then another. For the first time since walking into the dealership, Marcus allows a small smile. "Good," he says. "Then let's get started." The tension in the room thickens as Richard forces a laugh, his attempt at regaining control falling flat. His eyes dart around, searching for allies, but none of the employees dare to speak. Even those who once followed his lead remain silent, their expressions unreadable. "This is absurd," Richard snaps, his frustration bubbling over. This isn't about business. This is personal. You're being vindictive. Marcus remains unfazed. He calmly reaches into his pocket and pulls out his phone. With a single tap, the room fills with a familiar voice. Richard's own words from the previous day. People like you can't afford a car like this. Let's not waste each other's time. Ethan visibly stiffens. Richard's jaw tightens. The recording continues, replaying every smirk, every dismissive remark, every moment of degradation. You don't belong here. The silence that follows is suffocating. No one looks at Richard. No one defends him. Marcus locks eyes with him, his voice steady. This is not personal. This is accountability. The regional director straightens in his seat, clearing his throat. Mr. Thornton, Mr. Coleman, your actions violate corporate policies and the values this company stands for. His tone is sharp, leaving no room for argument. The board has decided that your employment is terminated effective immediately. Richard's face flushes a deep red. You can't do this. Marcus folds his arms. I already have. Security steps forward, but Richard doesn't move at first. His fingers twitch at his sides, his mind scrambling for an escape. He looks to Ethan, but Ethan is already defeated, his shoulders slumped. With no choice left, they grab their belongings and head toward the exit. Before stepping through the door, Richard pauses, turning back. His lips part, but there is nothing left to say. No argument to make. No defense that can undo what has already been done. The door shuts behind them. A heavy breath releases from the remaining employees. Some exchange looks of quiet relief. Others sit motionless, still processing the shift in power. Marcus turns back to the room, his voice firm but inviting. This dealership is under new leadership. That means things will change. He lets the weight of his words settle before continuing. We will serve every customer with respect. We will build a business that welcomes everyone, regardless of background or appearance. That is not a request. That is the standard. The employees nod, some more confidently than others. A woman near the back, one of the receptionists, sits up a little taller, her eyes flickering with something that looks like hope. Marcus allows a small smile. Those of you willing to uphold that standard, your jobs are secure. Those who can't, well, you saw how that ends. No one speaks, but one by one they nod. The regional director clears his throat again, standing. The corporation will be issuing a formal apology for the incident, and we will be implementing mandatory training to ensure this never happens again. Marcus doesn't react. Apologies and training are a start, but they mean little without action. Instead, he steps forward, resting his hands on the table. This isn't just about a dealership, he says, his voice lowering. It's about something much bigger. The way we treat people matters. The assumptions we make matter. He glances around the room, meeting the eyes of those who are willing to hold his gaze. I was disrespected yesterday, but I wasn't the first, and I wouldn't have been the last. That's what changes today. No one argues. No one can. A new era has begun. A week passes, and the air inside the dealership feels different. The tension that once lingered in the corners has been replaced with something unfamiliar. Openness. Employees move with a newfound sense of purpose. Their interactions less guarded, their words more careful. Change has taken root, slow but undeniable. Marcus steps inside, no longer the man who was dismissed, but the man in charge. The same showroom that once sought to deny him now belongs to him. Every polished car, every desk, every contract signed under this roof, his. Yet ownership is not the victory he cares about most. It is the shift happening before his eyes. A black family enters, the parents exchanging wary glances, their young son clinging to his mother's hand. The hesitation in their movements is all too familiar. They have been in places like this before, where politeness is laced with condescension, where their money holds less value, where they are seen but not served. The father approaches the front desk, clearing his throat as if bracing for impact. But instead of a dismissive glance, he is met with a warm smile. A salesperson, one of the newer hires, greets them with genuine enthusiasm. Good afternoon. How can we help you today? The father hesitates, waiting for the catch. His wife squeezes his hand, reminding him to hold on to hope. Marcus watches from a distance, the scene playing out like a reflection of his own past. He doesn't interfere. He doesn't need to. The family is led toward a row of vehicles, given the same level of service as anyone else. No skepticism, no judgment, just business, as it should be. He exhales slowly, feeling the weight that once pressed against his chest lift just a little. Nearby, a familiar voice murmurs, "Didn't think I'd see the day." Marcus turns to find an older black man dressed in a crisp suit, his salt and pepper beard neatly trimmed. The man watches the scene unfold with something between disbelief and admiration. Marcus nods, understanding the depth of those words. "Neither did I." The man shakes his head, a slow smile forming. "Took too long, but it's about damn time." Marcus smiles in return. "It's just the beginning." They stand in silence for a moment, watching as the young boy in the family excitedly points at a car, his parents exchanging looks of excitement rather than uncertainty. A shift, small but significant. This moment is more than a business transaction. It is a promise, a correction of what was once broken, a demonstration that respect cannot be gatekept, that access cannot be dictated by bias. Marcus turns, stepping into his office. On his desk sits a framed newspaper clipping, the headline bold and undeniable. "From denied to owner, a victory over discrimination." But to Marcus, this was never just about proving a point. It was about rewriting the rules entirely.